Agitorium nostrum in nomine Domini. We're on page 19, paragraph 24 of Humanum Genus, encyclical on
Freemasonry.
Written by
Pope Leo the 15th.
what year?
1884.
That's right. And what insight these popes have. They had a prophetic vision of the results of the errors of the modern world. They were blowing the trumpet to warn the human race. And did the leaders of countries listen to them?
No.
Did even the bishops listen to them?
No.
No, the American bishops, they took the syllabus of errors of Pius IX and just said, this is a European problem, not an American problem. So it was never taught. The seminaries never taught it. So liberalism was quite deeply entrenched in the U.S. from the 1800s. Very deeply entrenched. And of course in France. The evil too is increased. We're on page 19, next paragraph. The evil is increased by the dangers which threaten both domestic and civil society. What's domestic society?
Speaking about the family?
Yes. Domus, feminine, is house. So domestic is pertaining to the house. So domestic and civil society. So dangers to the family, dangers to nations and cities. As we have elsewhere shown in marriage, according to the belief of almost every nation, there is something sacred and religious. And the law of God has determined that marriages shall not be
dissolved.
What's the quote from our Lord? What God has put together.
God has put together, let no man put asunder.
That's right. No man, not even the Pope, can dissolve a true valid marriage. Right? Can the Pope dissolve your parents' marriages?
No.
No. He could use all his divine authority and papal authority and swing his papal cross, but it cannot dissolve what God has put together. That's right. If they are deprived of their sacred character and made dissoluble, if marriage is made no longer sacred and made breakable, trouble and confusion in the family will be the result. The wife being deprived of her dignity and the children left without protection as to their interests and well-being. So notice the fault is on mainly who?
The man.
The man, yes. The man has to do all he can to save his marriage and sanctify it. But sometimes I've seen it, there's good men, really good solid men, but the wife is a feminist. He made the mistake of marrying a feminist. And she wages war and makes a big deal out of every little thing he does, and and these kind of women push their divorce. It's sad. It's deplorable. It's pathetic. And then oftentimes the wife is good, is virtuous, and being a good wife, but the husband is failing in his duty. He's not leading the prayers, he doesn't love and cherish his wife, and he's not taking up the responsibilities that he's supposed to. So it can be faults on both sides, but once they're married till death do them part. I often tell the story of the Kuliks down in Pittston, Pennsylvania. They've been coordinators for the Society Chapel there for many years. Chet Kulik and his good wife Ann. They're good people. And her parents, or grandparents, worked in the mines in Pennsylvania. I think it was her grandfather, yes. And he got injured, and the injury paralyzed him. And the work crew carried him, left him on the porch, and never saw him again. In those days, there was no work compensation. So his wife opened the door and saw him lying on the front porch, unable to move. So she got the family members to pick him up and bring him in, and she cared for him the rest of his life. He lived 7 years more. So she could have said, well, I didn't ask for this. I got to change his diaper. I got to feed him. I didn't ask to take care of a big baby. She could have been hard-hearted like that and just said, well, I'm not sticking around for this. She could have, but they had the Catholic faith and they understood their vows. So she was faithful to the very end. God bless her. So when the vow is made, it's for sickness and poverty, sickness or health, riches or poverty, and good times and bad times. So that's all part of it. It's the whole thing. But this secular character of the Freemasons dissolves the sacredness of marriage. So, if marriage is deprived of the sacred character and made dissoluble, trouble and confusion in the family will be the result, the wife being deprived of her dignity as queen of the house, and the children left without protection as to their interests and well-being. To have in public matters no care for religion, and in the arrangement and administration of civil affairs, to have no more regard for God than if he did not exist. Isn't that the American system? We have to admit that. It treats God as if he didn't exist. What's an example, anyone? If he did exist, we would respect his laws. Yeah. Are his laws respected by the U.S. laws?
No.
What's an example?
Well, abortion.
That's an obvious one. Yeah.
And even the law of separation of church and state.
That's right. It goes directly against the first commandment.
Yeah.
That's right. So the mocking of the first commandment, the whole country is built on that. That's why many go to hell in these countries of liberalism. Many do go to hell. Many souls are lost. Many, many, many souls are lost because of this false freedom. And I think if you took a calculation, a poll of the number of souls saved in a Catholic society as opposed to the number of souls saved in a non-Catholic society, I think there'd be a gigantic difference. More souls are saved in a Catholic society. Of course, many are damned too, because God doesn't force people to love him. And the Catholic Church has never taught to force people to become Catholic. Never. Ever. That's one of the accusations hurled against the Church with all the false history about converting the Indians in South America and here in the United States, that they were forced to slave labor and forced to convert. That's simply not true. That's against the Catholic teaching. But they always, the Masons always distort the truth. So to treat God at the civil level as if he did not exist is a rashness unknown to the very pagans. What a marvelous point by Pope Leo XIII. Not even the pagans in Rome, Egypt, Babylon, China ever dreamt of leaving God out of their civil laws and their decisions. Never. It was always union of church and state. Rome was united to Zeus and all the false gods, right? And of course they're devils. But Rome had union of,
The church, the religion and the state.
yeah, religion and state was always part of every pagan culture. And only in Masonic days, since the French Revolution, was God kicked out of civil decisions and civil laws. It's never been seen in the history of the world. So it's really perverse. I like this point, Leo the 13th. It is a rashness unknown to the very pagans to leave God out. For in their heart and soul, the notion of a divinity and the need of public religion were so firmly fixed that they would have thought it easier to have a city without foundation than a city without God. It's so true. When the Romans built anything, especially a temple or a new building, they burnt incense to the false gods. But they burnt incense to the false religion. But it was a religion united to the state. Whenever the Romans went to war, they burnt incense to the gods. Whenever they won or lost a war, they burned incense to the gods. When they plowed a field, they burnt incense to the gods. Even the Aztecs did this. And they were Satanists. So how is it that we have become so proud, mankind has become so naturalist, so Judaic, that we kick God out of every level of society? And that's our age. That's why I think, well, not me, the Virgin Mary herself said, many, many souls are going to hell. Many, because of this Masonic government throughout the world, spread throughout all the world. Human society, indeed, for which by nature we are formed, has been constituted by
God, the author of nature.
So where does human society come from?
It comes from God.
Yes. So he's building up an argument here. And from him, as from their principle and source, flow in all their strength and permanence the countless benefits with which society abounds. As we are each of us admonished by the very voice of nature to worship God in piety and holiness, as the giver unto us of life and of all that is good therein, so also and for the same reason nations and states are bound to ignore him.
To worship him.
That's right, to adore him. Nations and states are bound to adore God. And therefore it is clear that those who would absolve society from all religious duty act not only unjustly, but also with ignorance and folly. So is it a question of justice that each individual render to God adoration? Is it a duty of justice?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, religion is a duty of justice. And of all the virtues, it's interesting, prudence, justice, temperance, fortitude, and temperance. Guess where religion falls?
Justice.
It falls under justice. It's a duty of justice to render God absolute adoration. And if that's the case for individuals, it's all the more the case for society. And God is the author of both, individual, families, and society. Of all three, he's the author. Father Dennis Fay goes deeply into this, explaining this and quoting Pope after Pope after Pope, and showing how the Freemasons have, like a bunch of termites in the house, wood, have eaten through and rotted society by their pernicious ideas, separation of church and state, the state neutral on matters of religion. So the point the Pope is making is very powerful. There's no history in the world, no race of people, no government, no tribe that ignored God, except modern man. That's why St. Pius X said in his first encyclical in 1903, man has replaced God. Man worships himself and has put himself in the place of God. And that's where he says in that encyclical, that because of this apostasy, who is not far off? Who?
The Antichrist.
The Antichrist. He says that in that encyclical. It's quite bold, because we haven't seen the Antichrist yet. But you can see it shaping up very quickly.
Even in his encyclical E Supremae Apostolatus, that one probably, he even says that because of all the apostasy we see in the world today, we wonder if that son of perdition has been born into the world.
Already. That's right. He makes a hypothetical guess that it's possible the Antichrist could be alive. That's true.
Yeah.
But God has had mercy on us, thanks to St. Pius X, thanks to Our Lady of Fatima. And the mercy of God has been held back with World War III also. Some people are praying. The rosary is, people are praying. Because the Third World War, we've been almost into it a few months ago. And just yesterday, that madman Zelensky of Ukraine bombed by drones Moscow, a building in Moscow, in Russia. I mean, that's a provocation to the Third World War, if there ever was any. And it was the biggest bombing yet. So Trump is stepping in and saying, we want peace. And Putin is saying, okay, but I'm going to have revenge for this, he said. So we'll see where that goes. But so the Antichrist, yeah, you can see it quickly developing. And Trump has helped Israel move the main city from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They want to rebuild the temple, re-begin the red cow sacrifices. They have the one world government. They have the one world banking system on the edge. As soon as they can get rid of the cash currency and everything goes to digital, there's a huge control over people, the banking system. And then Elon Musk and these fanatics are talking about implanting chips into the skull and even replacing part of the skull with technology. So everybody will have this surgical technological implants put in, which, you know, you can smell what the apocalypse says. Everyone who bows down to the beast, the Antichrist, will receive his mark on their forehead or on the right hand. And those who don't accept it won't be able to buy or sell. So that's very possible. You can see it just around the corner, right? It's not impossible. It's not far off somewhere in the future either. So anyway, so foolish, says Leo XIII, are those who try to leave God out of society, out of the states. 25, take it, Gavril.
As men are by the will of God born for civil union and society, and as the power to rule is so necessary a bond of society that if it be taken away, society must at once be broken up. It follows that from him who is the author of society has come also the authority to rule, so that whosoever rules, he is the minister of God.
Okay, stop. So society is made up of men who come from many families, right?
Yeah.
So many families, thousands of families, all with mom, dad, and children. That is what makes up society. But it would be just a lump of a mass of confusion unless there was someone to guide and lead the society to a proper end. And that is called what? Who must lead? It is one who holds the authority, which comes from the Latin word augeo, augere, auxi, auctum. Auctum, which means what? To increase. So authority seeks to increase the good of society, temporally, spiritually, and in all ways. So, but all this authority is directly coming from, all authority comes from who?
God.
That's right. And authority will be both the church that he established, and indirectly subordinate to the church is the
State.
I say indirectly subordinate, because the church doesn't issue, tax statements and where to build bridges. That's the state's business. But the church looks after education, marriage, and the good of souls, the spiritual domain, but also the temporal domain in a certain way. And the state is not above the church, but indirectly subordinate. They're two distinct, not separate, distinct societies, but they're both perfect societies in themselves that can exist by themselves if they need to. But God's plan was that this authority of the church and state work together to lead all these members of society towards the state looks for the temporal good of society, what's called the common good. So the state looks after what's supposed to be that men are able to live virtuous and have a sufficiency of material goods to live virtuous. Because if people are living in dirt poverty and scraping bugs out of the ground to survive, that's going to lead to murders, violence, lies, and conspiracies. So the state, and there's plenty of land in any country for families to have small farms. Plenty of land. So a good Catholic state, a good state will make it very feasible to have a family and be able to support a family by the work of the father's hands. And it's not that difficult. And in Catholic societies, this was the case. And it was Pope Pius XII told the Italian farmers, don't move into the big cities, stay on your farms, stay close to the land. Don't fall into this trap of moving to the big cities for an easier life. So that's the state. I repeat, the purpose of the state is to enable a sufficiency of material goods for people to live virtuous. And the church, her role is to get all these souls, obviously, where?
To heaven.
To get them to heaven. By giving the true teaching of Christ, his doctrine, his catechism, and his sacraments, and the sanctification of souls. So it's beautiful, really, how it's supposed to work. But the modern world just takes this and it's upside down. The people govern. Authority comes from the people. Church and state separate. It's a disaster. It's like taking the lantern in your living room and putting it upside down and breaking the lantern, setting the whole place on fire by the electric discharge. It's just chaos. And the popes are right. They're right. And we're going to see a lot more of this teaching with Leo XIII, Deuteronomilud, his encyclical on the civil state and the government, Immortalite, on the relation of church and state. It's very beautiful. It's wonderful. And common sense, as well as natural law and supernatural law. All right, where did we leave off? So you stopped in the middle of 25. Wherefore, continue. Right in the middle of paragraph 25.
Wherefore? Wherefore is the end and nature of human society.
Oh, just take it again. Guadalupe.
Wherefore, as the end and nature of human society so requires, it is right to obey the just commands of lawful authority, as it is right to obey God who ruleth all things. And it is most untrue that the people have it in their power to cast aside their obedience, whensoever they please. That's
exactly it. Because authority comes from God, we must obey the lawful civil authority. And we're happy to do that. You see that in the early church. St. Sebastian, he was happy to obey the orders of the emperor, except when it came to idolatry. He will not burn incense to false gods. So, yes. So we're to obey all the civil authority, except in points where it goes against the faith or against morals. So, for example, the Fauci injections were against all morals because the ingredients of them came from aborted babies that were their cells were ripped out while they're alive, and this is no secret. It's public. And because of that, it's gravely immoral. And most of the Fauci needles have aborted babies. It's now part of the ingredients. So there's no way Catholics can participate in this. Plus the harm that it's done. It's led to millions of deaths. I think over 20 million have died from the COVID shots. 26. Gavril, in like manner,
no one doubts that all men are equal one to another, so far as regards their common origin and nature, or the last end which each one has to attain, or the rights and duties which are thence derived.
Okay, so Pope Leo XIII is saying, yes, it's true, men are equal in these points. What points? Men are equal as far as their common origin, that is, we're all born of a mother and we're all created from the hand of God, and we all have the same human nature. So in that way we're equal, yes. And then also we're all equal because we all have the same last end, which is
heaven.
To get to heaven. And also rights and duties. We all have our own rights and duties according to our state of life. In that sense, everyone is equal, right?
Yes.
So there is a true Catholic understanding of equality. But the revolution has twisted this meaning and left out the eternal things and only apply it to temporal things. So he says this here. Go on, but they're not equal. Go on.
But as the abilities of all are not equal, as one differs from one another in the powers of mind or body, and there are very many dissimilarities of manner, disposition, and character, it is most repugnant to reason to endeavor to confine all within the same measure, and to extend complete equality to the institutions of civil life.
Yes, so Pope Leo XIII, he's just stating an obvious fact of common sense. There are differences of talents, of capabilities, of gifts, of mind. Some are more intelligent than others. Some are better at figuring out strategies. Some can solve problems better than others. Some can memorize better than others. Not even in the mind are we all equal. And body, there's all different differences of body. And, men are different from women. Women are different from men. Boys and girls differ from adults, babies. There's a whole world of differences. So they're not equal. And to pretend like they all are is a lie. So there are very many dissimilarities of manner, disposition, character. They're not equal in manner, disposition, and character. And he says it's against reason and most repugnant to reason to claim that everyone is equal in these aspects. So a black guy, most black guys can outrun any white guy because they have an extra muscle in their leg. And when it comes to the Olympic sprinting, most of them are black guys because they're super fast. And white guys have their talents also for governing and for building and technology and all that. There's a true place for this. And even nations differ from each other. Races differ from each other. God has given different gifts to different races. And it's foolish to pretend that these differences don't exist. And to call it racism just because you admit one race is better at something than another is just absolute foolishness. Stupidity beyond belief. But that's the modern world. So Pope Leo XIII is stating the obvious. Yes, we're all equal in one way, but you can't say we're equal in every way. Read on.
Just as a perfect condition of the body results from the conjunction and composition of its various members, which though different in form and purpose, make their union and the distribution of each one to its proper place. A combination beautiful to behold, firm in strength, and necessary for use, so in the commonwealth.
Okay, stop. So he's saying, look at the human body. You've got 2 eyes, 2 feet, 10 toes, 2 hands, 2 ears, teeth. The teeth can't be the hands can't be the ears, the eyes can't be the feet. You have an inequality just in the human body. All the organs have their own function. Not every organ can be the heart. No one could live. If every organ was the brain, which is the highest faculty of the body, well, how would you digest? How would you see? How would you sense? So, God made inequality even in the human body. The toes are not the head, but the head needs, even the ears need the toes for balance. If you don't have your toes, you're going to be falling because they help in balance. They help keep balance, standing and walking. Something as simple as the toes, right? I mean, this is so obvious, but this needs to be stressed, and Leo XIII is making this point. So look at the human body. Not every organ is equal. So in society, go on.
So in society, so in the commonwealth, there is an almost infinite dissimilarity of men as parts of the whole. If they are to be all equal, and each is to follow his own will, the state will appear most deformed. But if with a distinction of degrees of dignity, of pursuits and employments, all aptly conspire for the common good, they will present a natural image of a well-constituted state.
Yes. So same with society. Not everyone is equal. There has to be those who govern. There has to be those who teach. There has to be those who figure how to build a bridge, how to apply the engineering principles to practice. There are those who don't want to do that. They would rather just shovel ditches, cut wood, look after sheep, look after cows. So God has given different gifts to everybody. And the most obvious differences are men and women. And it's obvious women are made for children. The highest place for a woman is consecrated to Christ as a nun. That's the highest life. But then marriage. And obviously a woman who's pregnant shouldn't be hammering nails on the roof. In some pregnancies, they have to sit down a lot and lay down a lot. I know some good mothers who were pregnant and had to lay down almost all 9 months. They had difficult pregnancies. So it's not possible, it's not built in by God that the women be out in the construction world. It's not meant to be. They're meant to be the heart of the home. And there is a difference. And she's happy there, but the modern world with the feminism has made it, put it in bad light. Oh, you're a slave at home to your husband, looking after the children. You're a slave in the kitchen. Break free. Get out in the working world. Show you can do it just like the men. What foolishness. What a disaster. So, this is what the Pope is saying. So in the human body there's inequality, and in society there's inequality. And communism will bring about a false equality and therefore destroy everything. Paragraph 27. Now from the disturbing errors which we have described, the greatest dangers to states are to be feared. For the fear of God and the reverence for divine laws being taken away, The authority of ruler is despised. So what's this the recipe for? God is kicked out. Authorities of rulers are despised. What's that a recipe for?
Disaster.
Revolution.
Sedition permitted and approved, and the popular passions urged on to lawlessness with no restraint save that of punishment, hence the need for more police and SWAT teams and police force. A change and overthrow of all things will necessarily follow. So this is the Democrats, what they accomplished in the last 4 years and during the whole COVID period with all the burning in Minneapolis and burning of cities and Portland, Oregon, and all this going on. All this anarchy for Black Lives Matter, all it was a communist movement. That's all it was. But what does it lead to? Disorder, anarchy. Yea, this change and overthrow is deliberately planned. So Pope Leo XIII saying this, he's saying this is not just an accident. This is deliberately planned, meaning there's conspiracy behind it. Yes, conspiracy. Some people have a heart attack when they hear that word. I'm not a tin hat. Well, you'd be an idiot to say that, there are no conspiracies. Granted, you can overdo it and say everything is conspiracy, absolutely everything. Well, that might be exaggerating. But to deny it is also just naivety. So, yea, this change and overthrow is deliberately planned and put forward by many associations of communists and socialists. So communism and socialism work with Freemasonry. They're the arms and legs, right? And to their undertakings, the sect of
Freemasons.
is not hostile, meaning they're buddies. They're all buddies. Freemasons tell the socialists and communists what to do. And the Freemasons, the head of them is the synagogue of Satan. Yes, it is. But greatly favors their designs. The Freemasons favor the socialist and communist designs and holds in common with them their chief opinions. And if these men do not at once and everywhere endeavor to carry out their extreme views, it is not to be attributed to their teaching and their will, but to the virtue of that divine religion which cannot be destroyed. And also because the sounder part of men, refusing to be enslaved to secret societies, vigorously resist their insane attempts. So they don't succeed everywhere because there is some Catholic resistance. And there has been since the French Revolution. The Great Vendée, the Great Flemish, the Great Austrians. There's always been a Catholic resistance. And Archbishop Lefebvre, remember he said in the 1800s, most of the bishops were traditional and only a few were liberals. But now, after Vatican II, most bishops and popes are liberals and modernists, and very few are keeping the traditional Catholic faith. So, it will never be squelched out. Adjutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.